afternoon with us today on a Saturday. My name is Florence Wlodarski. Along with my husband over there, James, we are co-founders of a brand new social club in LA called Parallel. And Parallel is designed specifically for those who are doing life without kids. And so it is a new club that we started just several months back, and we're having our launch party on Saturday. And so we're very, very excited to host this book event with Dr. Jay Zigmont. So we, as Parallel, we host social events and programming like this on a monthly basis all throughout LA. And our goal really is to facilitate meaningful connections between people, strengthen social well-being, and build a sense of community for those who are in this community. And so with that, we are very thrilled to have Dr. Jay Zigmont here because he's going to be talking to us about making your finances simple so your life without kids can be amazing. And because we at Parallel are aiming to inspire our members to live and pursue their best lives, we thought this would be a great book, a great author to speak to. So he flew out all the way from Nashville to join us today. So before we dig in, let me just introduce him formally. So Dr. Jay Zigmont here is the founder and CEO of Child Free Wealth, which is a life and financial planning firm dedicated to helping those without children align their finances to the life they want to live. Dr. Jay is a certified financial planner, a CFP. He also has his PhD in adult learning from the University of Connecticut and also his MBA. A lot of education here. And
it's just collecting degrees. That's all you do. It's like a thermometer.
Yes. And he's done some executive coaching, life coaching. That's why this book is called The Child Free Guide to Life and Money. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. He is also the host of a podcast called the Child Free Wealth Podcast. And he is our author of the day today to talk about the Child Free Guide to Life and Money. He has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Business Insider, CNBC, Forbes, Fortune, Market Watch, and many more. And so we here in LA are thrilled that you're here. How about we all give Dr. Jay Zigmont a warm LA welcome. All right. Well, Dr. Jay, you flew all the way out here. We greeted you with this wonderful sunshine. A lot of people here are child-free by choice or circumstance. And some of us are here because they're interested in what this book is all about. So we are interested in your personal story. You are a PhD. You were a guy that then got into finance, child-free. I know your wife, and you and your wife are child-free. Could you give us an intro as to how you ended up writing this book?
Yeah, so I'm not a finance guy, okay? By trade, I'm actually come out of academia, out of adult learning on like how do people think. And I was studying to become a CFP, and my wife and I are child-free. Now, whether you use the term child-free, childless, whatever term you like, fine. For my wife and I, she had a 50-50 chance of dying if she got pregnant. So do I call that child-free, childless? I don't know, whatever box you want to check. But I was studying to become a CFP, and what's interesting to me is in all of the education on financial planning, there was never once a mention of being child-free. Everything assumes you either do have kids, will have kids, had kids, they're empty, all of it. So what that really means is anything you look at online is assuming you have kids. So this is a little over 3 years ago, I started doing this research, and I'm like, are me and my wife weird? And we are, okay? We're two PhDs. We sit around at night talking about research studies. I'm not kidding. Like literally, that's our dinner conversation. You never know. She's the quantitative researcher. I'm the qualitative researcher. But are we weird for being child-free? And at the time, I didn't even know the term child-free existed. I found the child-free subreddit. If you haven't found that, it's a cesspool. Yeah. But it's Reddit, okay? Like, let's be real on that. It had like 1.5 million people. So I'm like, okay, at least I'm not, there's others out there like us. Come to find out, the actual number in the U.S., somewhere around 25% of the U.S. are child-free or permanently childless. So it's between 50 and 60 million people just like us. And if you look at the younger generations, the number's even higher. Pew Research just did a study. They found that in adults under 49, if they don't have kids, 47% say they're never going to have kids. So I mean, it's a huge growing segment. Yet all of the advice assumes you can have kids. That's the American dream, a house, the 2.5 kids, the white picket fence. When I first, the publisher reached out to me and said, hey, I had a first book, The Portrait Child for Wealth. They have a second book. I said, well, yeah, if you ask an author, do you have another book? The answer is always yes. I mean, let's be real on that. And when I first sent it to him, I wanted to call the book F the American Dream. It didn't fly, hence the name. But that kind of is what we're doing. We are rethinking it and not going with that standard life script. And all of our life and financial planning needs to be different.
Yeah. So can you just mentioned the standard life script. Can you break that down for us?
So if I go back to the financial planning world, they assume here's what happens. You go to school, you get married, you have kids, you work for 25 years, you pass on money to the next generation. That's the standard life script. By the way, also built into there, you got to buy a house, you got to buy life insurance, you got to do all these things that just does not fit us. And what happens is if we're choosing to live a different life, whether it's by choice or not, doesn't really matter. You can't follow that same script with your life, your finance, all that. And I think the challenge is that script is like part of our culture, whether it's religion, whether it's your actual culture, your family, all these expectations. And it feels like if you're not following it, you're doing something wrong. You're not doing something wrong. You're just living your own life. I do a lot of podcasts and people ask, well, is it easier to live a child-free life? Like, it's not easier or harder. It's different.
Yes.
Living a different life script is not necessarily easier or harder. Some days it's harder. Okay, let's be real. We're in a politics world right now. I'm not going to talk about childless cat ladies and all the judgment that comes around this. Oh, actually, we're in LA. I can talk about that. I come from Nashville. We're not allowed to talk about that. Don't get me started on that. But I think that's all part of the standard life script. And I was telling Florence before this, just to give you an idea how strong that life script is. The current guidelines for DOT that just came out this last week for highway money, or 2 weeks ago, for highway money says we're going to give preference to cities and states that have higher than normal fertility rates and marriage rates. So when people say like this life script like isn't part of what we do, no, it's like in black and white.
Yeah. So before we came to this bookstore, I met with Dr. J earlier, just down the street, and we were catching up, and I was telling him about how I want to make a career pivot and all these different things, and we're just talking about life, right? And I have to tell you, he's a CFP and a financial planner. However, he is an excellent executive coach, life coach, and we were talking about this concept of the standard life script. I fell into that where, the societal pressures, get married, have kids, that whole thing. Myself and my husband over there, we also don't have children. And, a lot of our friends do. And so the conversations are different. The priorities are different. But talking about the societal pressure, there are things, even though I would say I bucked that traditional script, I'm aware of it, all of that. But Dr. J pointed out to me that I am still, a victim to or falling into the...
Well, okay. So here's the question.
Okay.
The question is, whose voice in your head saying you got to do that?
Yeah.
And we all have to pause and say, huh? Now, we're out here in the LA world. A lot of you rent, but in most of the US, it's like you have to buy a house or you're not succeeding.
Yeah.
Why? We're not going to live there for 5 to 7 years. We don't need the school system. My wife and I sold our house almost 2 years ago. We're planning to rent for the rest of our life until we get on a boat and travel the world.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't have to match. And when it comes to careers, one of our top download podcast episodes is I'll Make You Quit Your Job. And the reason that episode exists is my co-host Bree and I, she was working with me on clients and she started tracking how many clients I told to quit their job. And it was like most of them. Because what they would tell me is I'm going up the career ladder. I got this next opportunity. Maybe I'm making some good money. I'm making 6 figures. I don't love what I'm doing, but I went to school for this. I went up the ladder. I've got this all in there. I got to keep going. And I'll turn to them and say, okay, so what you just told me is for $150,000, you're willing to be miserable. And they're like, I didn't say that. Well, no, you did. But the standard life script says you got to. You got to save for retirement. You got to buy a house. Well, retirement's not a goal, which most child-free folks, it's like not the primary goal, or if it's a goal at all. And if you're living a different life, why do you have to do the same thing? And for some reason, I have a lot of clients that want to quit their job and go be librarians. Why? I don't know, but I have a few people in this room, like, I just saw, librarians, awesome job, does not pay well. Just reality check. Right. But if you're going to be happier, why not do it? And that's the hard part, is because the life script says you got to. And you don't realize how much power it has until somebody's like, why are you doing that? And they're like, well, because I put so much time into it. Well, that's nice. Like, you got another 40 years of your life. You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'll say, I don't care what age you are, but like, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want your impact to be? And that's a harder question than just following the standard script.
So then, you know, a lot of us are or have followed the standard life script for, let's say, half our lives. And then we approach our mid-30s. Let's say there are a lot of people that are in Parallel Social Club that are in their 40s, and they're thinking about the next half of their lives, right? So you talk a lot about life planning, and you connect it to financial planning. And I've heard you say that they're like this. How so?
So if you follow the standard Google advice on finance, which, by the way, if you Google financial advice, it's like Googling your medical issue on WebMD, you end up with cancer. I'm just telling you right now, like that, don't do that because it doesn't fit you. Right. It all goes and plans your finances first. If I get to this amount of money, I can retire. If I get to this, I can do that goal. My question is, what life do you want to live, and do your finances match that? So a great example of this, the vast majority of child-free folks don't have a priority in how much money they pass on to the next generation. All right. The way my wife and I say it is, our nephews get what's left over. If they get 10 grand or 100 grand, that's fine. If they get $1 million, I made a mistake. And the reason I made a mistake is because if I'm 90 and they're in their 60s, they really don't need the money then. They could have used it earlier in their life. Well, if I don't really want to retire and I don't want to pass on my next generation, how can I change my life to get more of the joy out of it? You know, I call it Marie Kondoing your life. How do I get rid of things that don't bring you joy and do more of the things that do? And then how does that relate to your finances? But what I see is all people, like, they get stuck on like, well, I can't. I'm like, why? Well, because I'm going to mess up my retirement. Well, that's not your goal. Or like they just start getting stuck on, you were taught you had to do these things, especially folks that have been really good savers over time. And I'm like, okay, spend it on you. And they're like, I can't do that. Well, yeah, you can. What else are you going to do with your money? Like, there's actually a point, and kind of that mid-40s is usually where I see it, where every extra dollar you're earning goes to your estate, which is not a priority for you. So you're actually earning money for a purpose you don't care about.
I've heard you mention that on a podcast before, and that made me pause, because you've said it in a different way also, that if you're, you know, at a certain point, you have enough money to die with zero, which we'll talk about in a second. But you get to a point where every day you're working, you're then basically working to give the money away to government or people or charities that you didn't mean to give that much to. Is that what you're saying?
Even if you want to give it to charities, give it during your life, because then you get a tax break.
Yeah.
They call no, seriously. Like, if I'm going to give to charities, I want something for it. Like, I want to be part of the charity. I want to do this.
You want to volunteer?
Yeah. Like, I want to be part of boards or whatever. The way they say it is giving with a warm hand instead of a cold hand. Sounds rough, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And what happens is, as you start looking at all these assumptions, you start realizing, why am I hustling and grinding for money that I don't care about? And that's super countercultural right now. Can I really just enjoy my life and my money? My wife and I have had this discussion. She's like, she likes your job. And my rule with your job, once you get to a certain point, is like, only do the job you would do for free and then get paid for it. And she's like, I love my job. I'm doing this. She was in academics. She's now in nonprofits. There's not like the tenure track anymore of that game. She's like, can I just really just do my job and enjoy it? And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. And it's this freeing moment of like, Well, then when my boss calls me and wants me to do something after night, I'm like, no. Because here's the thing. If you had kids, you'd be at the soccer game and be like, no, I can't help you.
That's true.
The Society for Human Resource Management looked at this and found somewhere along child-free people work about 60% more than parents. By the way, their take on it was hire child-free people because you get more bang for your buck. I'm not.
That's the recommendation from HR.
Well, they didn't say it out loud, but like
yeah.
And it gets interesting, you know, when you get into the politics of this. Some like 28 states have rules about not discriminating based on familial status, but it only protects people with kids.
Oh.
You can actually discriminate against people without kids, no problem. So this is that like, oh, you don't get Christmas because you don't have a family. Oh, you got me mad now.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, no, I have a family. It's me, my wife, and my dog, and you know we've got our parents. But like, it's you mean because I don't have kids, and that's the hard things we're challenging.
Yeah. So, can you talk to us a little bit about the die with zero concept? Because that's what you're talking about. You know, if you don't need to invest to create generational wealth because you don't have kids to pass the wealth down to, you're talking about die with zero. What does that actually look like?
Okay, if you have a crystal ball and you can tell me when you're going to die, I can plan exactly on this.
Okay.
Anyone got one? Mine's out of order. And the reality check is there's only so much money you need for end of life. So we actually create what we call a die with zero safety net. Figure out answer for long-term care, put off Social Security till 70, a little cash cushion. And then we spend more time with our clients talking about spending money than saving money. So I did somebody's financial plan the other day, and they're CPAs by trade. So they've got all their numbers perfect. Okay, like just down on an Excel sheet doing their thing. And I get to the end and I'm like, so you do realize you're dying with $100 million.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, well, I mean, our assumptions are a little less. Okay. So we had a debate because it's CPAs on, assumption rates. And I said, okay, so you're dying with $50 million. Are you okay with that? And they were like, I'm like, why are you still working? They were working an extra year to put more padding in there. And I'm like, so you're dying with 60 million now. So like, there's a point where you get there. I mean, like when you're in that like rent and ramen phase, you're barely making ends meet. That's a different question. But for most of us, we leave the rent and ramen phase in money, but we don't leave it in our mindset. Got to scrimp and save, got to save for a rainy day, and the end is it's all going to our estate. And how much life could you have lived in the middle? There is a book called Die with Zero. It actually was made for parents. Good. It was made for parents.
For parents?
Because their argument is if you're going to invest in your kids, you should do it while they're alive, not when they die. Not when you die. Okay. Like,
okay.
That's what it is made by an engineer by trade. So he's got a whole lot of math in there. The words die with zero often scare people. I don't literally mean you're going to be like eating cat food. No, I mean, like that's the assumption. Like I'm going to go eat cat food if I go on this plan. No, we have a safety net. We have a structure. We have a plan. This is not YOLO, but you can actually invest in yourself and in what matters to you.
So it's winding down your wealth, right? That's what I call it. So how does that actually work? And is that in your book?
It is. So by the way, this is one of those that it actually takes some software to figure out. If you've been in the financial world, you've probably seen a 4% safe withdrawal rate or FIRE numbers. All of that assumes you want to pass the money to the next generation. So all of that does not fit us. And now that's taken as gospel in the financial independence world. What we'll actually do is we will plan, and to do this right, you actually have to do ongoing planning. Like, every year we're making adjustments, but we set a minimum spend each year, not a maximum. And for many of our clients, that means a minimum giving structure or whatever else. And for some reason, a lot of our clients, they feel guilty about their money, don't want to, show it off too much. And we'll say, all right, how about we match your travel, because that's your goal, with your giving. I had clients who give $100,000 a year and travel $100,000 a year. Well, at the end of the year, I usually ask them, which one did you get more out of? 9 times out of 10, it's the giving. But it gives them permission to spend on themselves, to enjoy their money, to do something with it.
So, there are a lot of people here that there's a variety of, I would say, passion regarding personal finance. education, personal education that people have done to learn about personal finance, because these are things that we don't learn in school, right? There was somebody that I knew that I had invited to this event, and he doesn't have kids, and he's single, and he's in his 40s. And I said, hey, you might want to, this might be a helpful talk, take a look at the book. And he said, I already have a financial advisor. And I don't understand why just because I don't have kids, why I would need a financial advisor that focuses on this population. So what would you say to that individual, who's not here, by the way?
I was like, did we just get ourselves in trouble? There's a privacy issue there. We're an SEC registered firm. We got to watch these things. No, I think the challenge is most financial advisors, by the way, keep in mind, the term financial advisor is not a legal term. Anyone can call themselves a financial advisor. So you can just sell them life insurance, call yourself a financial advisor. Most of them just work on investments, not on the life and the goals. So what I tell anyone who has a financial advisor, I say, go to your advisor and ask them, how is your plan different because you're child free? Now, here's the most common answer. Number one on the board, is you'll change your mind. Which, you know what I tell them to do at that point? Out. Number two is it's not different. Well, that's not true. Number three is I don't know. Let's figure it out. I'm actually okay with number three, because before I started writing about this, like I said, in the CFP, there was never a mention of it, but it changes just about everything. I did an article for financial planners, and it was originally like top 15 things that change your financial plan when you're child free. And I ended up running out of things because I was like 20 and 23. And like anytime somebody asked me to write 1,000 words, I get 5,000. But I think the challenge is there's nothing in the education on it. And to your person saying that, absolutely. If they're happy, great.
Yeah.
When they sit down with me, what they're going to realize is, oh, you can do something different with your money. And let me give you an example of this. So most financial advisors, there's a large firm, if you've ever seen ads, it says, we do better when you do better. They charge a percentage of your assets, and their goal is for your assets to always go up. Well, if you truly want to wind down your wealth or die with zero, there's a conflict of interest in there.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue how to fix that. That's why my firm charges flat fee. But I think the challenge is it's just built into the system. I had another advisor, works at a big firm. You'd recognize the name. I don't want to call him out. Said, I don't think as a fiduciary, I could advise somebody to wind down their wealth and die with zero. I'm like, well, if that's their goal, and what come to find out is because that's how their billing system is set up, how their software system is set up, how I had to fight with one of our software systems for about a year to allow them to put a couple in there not married. Well, 32% of child-free folks will never marry. You can still be partnered, you can do whatever, but it just doesn't, people ask me, should I get married if I'm child-free? I'm like, do you need health insurance? No? All right.
Okay.
I mean, it changes so much that I get it. If he's not ready to ask, talk about it, that's fine. Just ask.
Yeah. So then what are a couple of the differences, right? So if you are trying to plan for your finances, you don't have kids, there's this concept of, okay, wind down your wealth. Yes, we talked about that. But what other elements of financial planning or life planning should we think about that we don't normally talk about?
So the first thing is you have to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. And that's actually like not usually a step in the financial planning process. Let me ask you all a question. You're not going to share. You can share later. My question to child-free people is, what does the second line of your obituary say? So the first line is Jay died at this age in Nashville. The second line is normally father of three, leaves behind Jack, Joe, and John. Ours is not going to say that.
Yeah.
What does yours say? And the reason is, if we figure out that, then we can figure out, is your money going in that direction? I've been working on mine. Mine's going to say something like loving husband, world traveler, author, and innovator. Well, I'm not doing a lot of world traveling right now. I'm busy with the company, but it gives me goals, and I can make sure my money matches the values. Because when we get in the book, we have the 8 no baby steps. If you haven't read Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps, interesting thing about Dave Ramsey, he's got a plan for everything. But, you got to when do you buy a car? When do you buy a house? But kids come anytime. And I was like, well, they're a little expensive more than a car, but all right. But the first 3 are get out of debt. They're very similar. Step number 4 is save towards your goals. It doesn't say save towards a house. It doesn't save towards retirement. All of those are options for child-free people. Then we get into things like getting your insurance right. Well, life insurance for child-free people, nearly useless.
Yeah.
If you're solo, there's so few cases where I'd say buy life insurance. But if you go to life insurance companies, their goal is that your life insurance premium per month is the same as your mortgage. Like crazy. On the other hand, we need disability insurance. If you're single and you don't have disability insurance, that's the only thing you're taking away from here. Just go get disability insurance. Because Social Security pays you like nothing. All right.
Okay.
Then we get into things like planning for your parents. This is the old, you don't have kids, so you can take care of mom. Somebody in here, I'm sure, has heard that. I've been taking care of my mom since I was about 16. We get into estate planning for child-free folks. One of the hardest questions we're trying to answer is who makes decisions for us when we can't? It's a problem I've been working on for about 3 years. We're actually launching a new company, a new product later this year to address this. You're lucky you're in California. You can actually hire a professional fiduciary. The other 48 states, you're kind of out of luck because California and Arizona can do it. So we do estate planning, we do die with zero, like we do all these things different. And then the other one that's tied in there, what's your plan for long-term care? This question of who's going to take care of when you're older is two parts. Who pays the bills and who makes decisions? Now, they keep saying that's a problem for child-free people. Here's the actual data. If anyone ever asks you who's going to take care of when you're older, U.S. Census looked at it and looked at adults over 55. And they found that childless adults, 2.5% of people got any financial support from their family. So that's like nothing. But they looked at adults over 55 who were parents. 1.5% got any support from their family.
Wow. So
those who think your kids are going to take care of you, no.
Yeah. So then,
you okay with that, Florence?
Yeah. So I actually have a lot of friends who, of course, they have kids and they do have that expectation. Now they won't maybe say it out loud to their kids,
say it too,
right? They them, right? And you can do everything as a parent, and that's not guaranteed. And so I know that those who don't have kids, that's a question we get asked very, very often. But this whole concept of who's going to make decisions for you? There's the executor of your will, you have your financial power of attorney, and you've got your medical power of attorney. And so I know that I've talked about estate planning with several friends, and you mentioned the term estate planning, and people think, I don't really have an estate. I'm not rich. I'm just getting by. I'm going month to month, or whatever it is. So, but I've heard you talk about the importance of estate planning, what's involved in it. It's this whole idea of who's going to make decisions for you, right?
So I think people think about estate, they think about their will and the executor. If I'm dead, I don't really care what happens to my stuff. I'm not going to know. But here's the problem. If you don't have a will and you don't have next of kin, the state can take your money. So I was meeting with a banking regulator. I said, what happens to child-free folks that come through, they don't have a next of kin on the will? He says, we post it on our website. I'm like, so that means I'm supposed to look at all 50 states to say if, did my cousin die? He's like, yeah, well, we're not searching for it because we get the money if we don't find somebody. And that's not a joke. That's legit. They don't search too hard. Let's put it that way. I had another state, they put it in the newspaper in the public notices. I'm like, yeah, because I look in the local newspaper of one, so if you don't put a will, your money's going to go possibly to state. I don't care what your politics are. Nobody wants that. The other problem is if you don't have a power of attorney. So this is somebody make decisions for you when you're still alive. So you're like, you cross the street, you get hit by a car, and now you're not responsive. The question is who makes decisions for you. If you don't have a piece of paper, the person making decisions for you is either the healthcare organization or the government. And if it's long-term, that's where we get those horror stories of the conservatorships, the guardianships, those are really bad. And what I worry about is, so my wife and I, we're in a car crash together. We're each other's, but we're unconscious. Who makes the financial decision for us? Who makes the medical decision for us? And who lets our dog out? Which sounds silly. My wife's going to be in the hospital. She'll be worried about me, but I'll tell you right now, she's going to worry more about the dog. She'll try to pretend not, but I'm like, Colt needs to go out. And those are the type of things that kids technically or normally handle that we need to have a solution.
Yeah.
And I've been working on this for about 3 years trying to find a solution. And I've asked all around. And the answer is, if you're in California, Arizona, you can appoint a professional fiduciary. In the other states, a trust company can do it for you, but they only want you for like $5 million or more. And they really don't want you if you're dying with zero, because that like they're charging percentages.
Right.
And there's one attorney I found in Georgia, and otherwise you're out of luck. And it's something we've been working on, and we're actually launching a product called Child Free Trust that we're actually going to serve as child free people's executor, medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney across the country.
Yeah, that's
because the other problem is I do it here in California. I'm traveling to Maine, and now that person in California might not be able to take care of me. Like, it's a huge issue. You can do your paperwork for free. There's a website called freewill.com. The worst case, you got to pay for a notary for $15. Get the paperwork down, especially if you're in a couple, not married. Your spouse means nothing without the paperwork. For those in the LGBTQ plus community, when we're worried about all these politics and what happens to marriage, got to get the paperwork in place. Like, it's all of these things that we just don't think about.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I found in your book, a lot of people don't like to think about death, end of life, even for our parents, but for ourselves even, right? We're just thinking we're kind of kicking that can down the, but I found something in your book that said when you're in your mid 40s or so, that's the time when you want to start thinking about who's going to take care of you, long-term care insurance, and you want to get that insurance before you're 50, and I'll have you comment on that. But you also talk about it in case I die file, right? Now, it's not the most fun conversation, but this goes along with what you just said, right? If you don't have kids.
I get to talk about all the fun stuff like dying and end of life and, like being in the hospital, being in a nursing home, like things nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a plan, you're out of luck. My answer when somebody says, who's going to take care of when you're older? My answer is my long-term care plan and the people I appoint to make these decisions for me. Long-term care costs on average $115,000 a year. It is cheaper to live on a cruise ship year-round. Just telling you, like that is an alternative. They have food there. They have medical. Seriously. On average, men will spend 2.2 years in care. Women 3.7. So you're talking for women $500,000 today, and that costs go up 5% every year.
Ooh. Okay.
The reason why I say in your mid 40s is when you look at long-term care insurance is because it's based on both your health and your parents' health. So your parents get a diagnosis of dementia. As soon as that checkbox is on the piece of paper, your cost went up about 50% or your coverage goes down. If both your parents have the checkbox for dementia, Alzheimer's, or any of the cognitive decline, you're not going to get insurance. That's it. There are other ways around it, but it's a big issue.
Yeah.
But it's expensive. And at 45 is when long-term care insurance is most affordable. I'm not saying it's affordable, because it's not. But if you don't have an answer, the only care, Medicare does not cover long-term care. Medicaid does, but only when you're broke. And in case you haven't seen on the news this week, they're trying to cut whatever gajillion dollars out of Medicaid. And I'll tell you, I worked as a medic. You know Medicaid facilities because your feet stick to the ground because they're that disgusting.
Oh.
And that's no exaggeration. It's just, what it is. And those, by the way, are the rooms of 4 to a room, and you never see people.
Yeah. So
wasn't that just great?
I'm going to change the tone. I'm going to change the last thing before we go into audience Q&A. We've got some time for that, so prepare your questions. But can you talk to us a little bit about fire versus file? You talk about file, and that's something to get excited about. So break that down for us.
So if you Google, fire is common right now. It says financial independence, retire early. Big movement. This is where the 4% rule comes in, all that. That assumes you want to retire. So retirement is kind of like an on-off switch for work. I'm out, I'm done. If you look at the people in the fire community who actually have retired, it's kind of like the dog who caught the car. They're like, I retired at 45, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And for child-free people, what I find is it's more like I want to dial back work. So we have clients who are like therapists, and they're, instead of working 4 days a week, seeing clients, they'll work 2. Or they're authors, and they're still going to write, but they're going to do less. And if you're going to do that, we have an approach we call FILE, Financial Independence Live Early. And it's about investing in you and what matters to you and your values. Those are the people I'm telling, go ahead, be a librarian. Your goal is not to retire. It's going to slow down your retirement, but that's not your goal.
Mm-hmm.
Invest in you and what you care about. And when people start pulling that apart, they're like, oh, then you're telling me I don't have to wait until 65 to retire? Well, 65 is a magic age in theory, but age is least important.
Mm-hmm.
How will you go live your life now?
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple that came to me recently, and they're actually on the podcast. Andy and Libby, we share their actual meetings. They came to us and said, hey, I got to hit this fire number. They had their number, I forget, it was like 2 or 3 million or something. And I got to work 5 more years to do it. So we ran through all the numbers, and I'm like, you don't care. You're dying with zero. You're going to still do some work. You could quit now. And they're like, no. I must do my fire number because this is what it says. Well, in the end, I said to them, look, within a year, you can do this. They actually post on social media. They're now in France, living their best life. She works as a travel agent here and there. He's out traveling the world. Like, it's possible. But if they were stuck in what they felt like they had to do, the good boy, good girl things to do, they would have missed their life.
Yeah. Well, Dr. J, I think that my husband and I have been talking to you after this book event, and just kind of getting our finances to line up with our life vision. But like you said, we need to plan out and answer the question, what do we want to do with the rest of our lives, right? So that's something that we're looking forward to. But we want to move over to the audience now. If you have any questions, we'd love for you. Yes. Okay.
I wanted to know, for one thing, about if you get put into a nursing home or you need assisted living care. Right now, I think per month it's anywhere from $7,500 to $12,500. And if you're in your 60s or whatever, what company would you recommend? And do you think it's worth it, especially if you can maybe afford that if you have a pension, Social Security, and the rest? Would it be worth it to pay this high fee for term care now, or you're going to have the money to afford it when you go in?
Yeah. So the question is, all right, I've got a pension, I've got Social Security, I got other money, I'm in my 60s. Long-term care is really expensive. By the way, if it's in Alaska, it's $26,000 a month. Like, which state you're in matters. Like, I mean, crazy numbers. Should I buy a policy, whatever? I'm actually a big fan of what's called CCRCs, Continuing Care Retirement Communities. You buy into like these 55 and older communities, and then right next door, they have this assisted living facility, and right next door to that, they have this skilled nursing facility. But what they do is they tell you it's one price. So you pay X rent, essentially, for life. And if you need longer care, great. There's another example. It's Villages at Moorhead Beach. They have an apartment complex for people that are retiring. And what they do is they provide concierge. They provide, they have like a Michelin-starred chef there. I mean, like, nice place.
Wow.
All these things. And what they found is that if you have those home health things, less than 5% have to leave for nursing home. And the 5% is like dementia, Alzheimer's, like, I mean, those are definitely going to be those extreme cases. So there's alternatives. The question is, do you set a plan? And if you wait until you like break your hip and you're forced to go in the nursing home, you don't really have much of a choice. And it's probably going to suck. I'm just being transparent on that. Like, I mean, nursing homes, if you don't pick what it is, that's where we get those horror stories. On the other hand, I can pick this gorgeous facility. Now, I did find one recently at a 10-year waiting list. So like, you might have to get on the paper early, but you can have an answer, and it can be luxurious and for not as much as what the nursing home was going to be.
Yeah. Anybody else?
We had somebody right here.
Oh, over here.
Well, I
Yes.
was just going to ask a follow-on to that, because a lot of financial planners talk about creating your own long-term health savings component to your financial planning, because the part about long-term health insurance that you're not talking about is retrieving the money and getting them to pay for real care is actually not an easy thing to do.
It depends on which policy.
Well,
but yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you've lived through it,
Yeah.
you know, trying to access the coverage when you're the child of somebody or a friend of somebody that's doing it, it's quite cumbersome.
It can be.
So to the extent that there are fiduciaries out there who will really chase the money, but it often doesn't provide the kind of full coverage of care that people think they're getting. And so I hear a lot of financial planners talk about if it's $115,000 a year, if it's $200,000 a year, making sure that you have a portion of your own financial planning that's designated for that, as opposed to giving it to some kind of bureaucratic insurance company that might be very difficult to navigate.
Yeah, when I say at 45, you need a plan for long-term care, you need a plan. It could be your own pocket, it could be life insurance, long-term care insurance. We don't do the life insurance combo with long-term care because we don't need the life insurance. It depends on your situation. So in a couple, if you're going to self-fund, what I worry is that the first one going into care makes the other one broke. No, seriously, it's a real problem. If you're going to self-fund today, as a couple, you need to put about $500,000 away just for that and let it grow on that. Now, if you're single, we call you soloist, single with no kids, you got to put $500,000 away. And that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but what it is in a couple, you tend to watch out for each other for a little bit.
Yep.
When you're single, you use more care. It's actually why long-term care insurance is more expensive. Long-term care insurance, standalone policy only. There's only 2 companies that I use for that. I don't sell any long-term care insurance. I don't make any profit off it. Works for people with somewhere between $500,000 and $3 million net worth. If you have less than $500,000, you're probably going to end up in Medicaid. Just honest truth that. If you have more than $3 million, you probably get to do it out of pocket. In the middle, it's a debate. I just did a couple in their 40s for care for 3 years for each of them. The policy I use includes in-home care, assisted living care, or skilled nursing. It was going to be about $200,000 to pay for the whole policy. Now, they're looking at going, well, $200,000 for an insurance company, right? Put $500,000 aside. They're actually still debating it. They're trying to figure out. I'm like, I don't care. Pick one. You have to have a plan. Saying, I hope the government fixes this. Not it.
Right. Question over here. Yes.
Dr. J, thanks for coming out. Really appreciate the talk. My wife and I are mid-30s and both working. And I think a couple of years ago, we looked down and we started to think about maybe we could turn off retirement contributions. And I'm just curious if you find that to be a theme that is more common among this type of demographic and how you think about it.
Yeah. So the question is, hey, I'm in my mid-30s. We're looking at saying, can we turn down retirement savings? Maybe. But here's the problem. You're in California. And taxes here are crazy. So in actuality, I'm going to make you put it in your retirement to save on the tax side. And then I'm going to show you how to get access to it before 59 and a half. There's ways to do it. So in the book, we talk about tax planning. What is your plan? We're going to pay the IRS every penny that's owed. We're not like putting to a Cayman Island and, like whatever. We're going to pay every penny, but we got to choose and have a tax plan around it. And it's different than this norm because I may want access to it or a different one else it is. In actuality, by putting in your 401k, your IRAs, other things, it grows and you don't pay the tax bill today. If you really want the right answer if you're in California, you put in traditional 401k now, then you move to a state with no state tax and pull it out then. Now, you may or may not want to move to a state that has no income tax. All of those are not necessarily friendly to the child-free community. I can say that as someone who lives in the South. But the thing is, it's not necessarily about retirement in that case. It's about the tax savings. If you are making $200,000-$300,000 here in California, you're paying 40% plus in tax. You can make moves on your taxes that can save you 10-20%. You're saving a lot more of your money. And that's where it's like, oh, that's where you pay for a professional. Like in the book, I even say, like, you can do all your investing on your own. We use a 3-fund portfolio, the whole US, the international, some bonds. Simple. It's the tax planning, the life planning, the bigger picture. That's the hard part.
Yes. And then we had one back there. Yeah, Sean.
Not to get complicated, but throwing this one out at you. Asset-backed long-term care insurance. Different type of hybrid policy. I can define it, but I'll let you do it. Can you explain to everybody how that works? And the spend down on the life portion towards your medical, and then you access the benefit. And that seems to be a more interesting combination of the two. Yeah.
So the question was about asset-backed long-term care insurance. I don't buy anything that's hybrid. And here's the reason. Okay. We are buying two things. Like if you buy a whole life insurance, we'll use that example because people know that one. You're buying something that's investing and insurance at the same time. That's like buying a spork. It's a spoon and a fork that do neither job well. All right. They sell it because they make a lot of money.
Mm.
Now, if you're going to die with zero and you're truly going to use your assets for it, let's do that. Let's actually use your assets to do it. If we're doing a hybrid plan, so often people try to sell life insurance with a hybrid with long-term care, we're buying stuff we don't need. And I had an insurance company that worked with it. They tried to push me for their clients on it. I said, okay, fine, price it out. Let's do this. And what we found was you can get 2 years of care in a hybrid or 3 years in a standalone for the same price. Because you're not buying the stuff like that. Everybody else like, well, you need this, you need the cash balance, or you need that. No, we don't.
Mhm.
I will say there's only one case, one only annuity that I will go for. And the annuity has a long-term care rider on it. It's for people who are nervous Nellies who truly want to die with zero. You can put your money in the annuity, you get a check every month. And when you go into long-term care, interestingly enough, it's much easier to get access to because they're like two issues with activities daily living. You can't toilet yourself, you can't dress yourself. They double the amount you get for 5 years. I like that answer. It's actually not the right financial answer. Math-wise, not the right answer. But it's the way to actually truly die with zero because you get a flat amount each month. You spend the money and next month you get a new check.
Mhm, mhm. So we have time for two more questions. We'll go here and then we'll go over here.
So
Yeah.
I had watched my dad take care of my mom for 10 years who had Alzheimer's. And then I helped take care of my dad for the last few years for him. And I'm a finance person. So I was looking at everything he's paying for and seeing that people were taking advantage of him, which
Mhm.
starts to happen as he gets older. You start to not remember things. And I kept thinking to myself, who is going to care that enough about me?
Mhm.
Because you can get a trust fiduciary person to do certain things, but I'm like, no one is going to care. I'm looking at everything and I'm fighting people on things that like, how dare you take advantage of him?
Yeah.
And that's the part I kind of worry about, and that's what I'm like trying to have enough money. I don't want to die with money, but it's like you never know when you're going to die. And I saw what he had to go through where he couldn't necessarily go to a place that he wanted to go to. So I'm trying to balance that, and I just don't know how do you get to someone who really cares about you if you don't get it.
So this is why I've spent so much time fighting this. I spent the last 18 months working with banking regulators because they're really antique. They haven't had a new idea in 100 years. I'm not exaggerating. Like, this is really weird. And finding a fiduciary you trust to do that, that's a challenge. I think somebody explained to me the easiest way. I said, look, my mom's in the nursing home. She's 90 years old. She loves chips, and the nurses won't give her chips. He's like, just give her the damn chips. Like, I mean, what's it going to do to her?
Mhm.
And his question was, who makes sure I get my chips?
Mm.
And the answer is you need to have a good plan with a fiduciary you trust and an aging care manager. That's the other part there, because that's what the aging care managers do is fight for you. And you have this team. Now, is that perfect? No.
Mhm.
I'll tell you what's scarier. I had somebody email me. She said, hey, I'm late 70s. I got nobody that can do this for me. They're actually in Washington, so I didn't even have an answer for them. And she says, I have a nephew cross country. I don't really know them. Can I make him the executor of my will and have him be my power of attorney? I said, you just set up an opportunity for elder fraud. Because, if I'm going to get the money in the will, I put you in the cheap home. You all think that's not going to happen, but AARP, the stat is 1 out of 10 elders report elder abuse. What's the real number? The amount that are fraud, it's absolutely scary.
Yeah.
The thing is to build that team, and you and I can chat offline about it because I've been through a whole bunch of this, and that's why we're actually building a system. We're building a whole thing on how do you get the information over, how do you make sure your wishes are we're doing that. I've had to spend 3 years trying to figure this solution out because you're one of 50 million that need this answer.
Yeah.
And the one answer that does not work is the government's going to make decisions for me.
Yeah.
No.
So that's the Child Free Trust product that
It
you're
is.
talking about. That's innovative and that you're still working on bringing to the market, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Time-wise, we've just got a couple more minutes. Any short questions, Melissa?
I don't know if it's short.
Okay.
It might be more for like a psychologist or something.
Welcome to my world. No, seriously.
He's a life coach.
This is where, I spend 80% of my time working with people on my PhD, which is the adult learning cognitive psychology side. The other 20 is the finance numbers.
Yeah, okay. The other questions were a little more concrete. Mine's a little more like, how would you even explain this to a family member, like your parent, for example, like the baby boomer generation.
Yep.
Yeah. So like, who, especially if they immigrated from another country, it's always about saving.
Mhm.
Like, my mother would go crazy. Like, if I were to explain this concept to her.
Mhm.
You know, and not like, yeah, I'm old enough to make my own decisions, but you still gotta deal with your mother. So
Mhm.
like, how do you even explain this to them?
So every time somebody asks me, how do I explain this to my parents? I'm like, you don't. Like, I mean, seriously.
Just-
They don't. So my wife's got a 50-50 chance of dying. I'm 47. We still have family members collecting baby clothes for our kids.
Oh.
And I've had them say, well, you know, I mean, you could take the chance. It's 50-50. And I'm like,
Oh no.
okay. And this is what happens. The guilt comes, the real, you know, all that. They're not going to understand. There is no chance of that. They are follow the standard life script. And the problem is, it's so ingrained. I had somebody for my first book. She said that this way. She said, I go to church every Sunday and they always talk about good dad, good mom, and that's everything. I didn't realize there was even a choice not to have kids. That's what's in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My mother the other day says to me, well, I mean, you talk about this child-free stuff all the time. What if I didn't have you? I said, then I wouldn't have a problem. She did not appreciate that.
Yeah, no.
The only one that's better than that. So I got my PhD at the same time, same December, it was Christmas time, as my sister announced her first child. My wife, being a wise ass, asked my mother, well, which are you more proud of? Y'all want to guess?
The grandchild.
So where I'm going is, if you want their approval, if you want them to believe in it, they won't.
Mhm.
Just period.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when they're the ones going to you, well, who's going to take care of you when you're older? Because what they're really saying is, I'm planning on you taking care of me. Especially for the soloist. You're single with no kids. Like, well, you can move in with me, or I can move in with you. No, mom. You know, my wife and I have a rule. Nobody lives with us. I'll lose my mind. You're not going to get them to accept it. You need to be comfortable with it. And by the way, you're right. That's where the therapist comes in.
Yeah.
But you have to accept that you're living a different life, because your parents keep like, well, don't you want to buy a house yet? And don't you want to do this yet? And don't you, Mom, when you bought the house in 1955, it was $18,000. All right.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's a different world now.
Yeah. So I know that there are some other questions, but Dr. J will be sticking around. He will be signing books. The book is available for purchase over there at that desk if you haven't bought it yet. But Dr. J, thank you so much for spending your time with us. The Child-Free Guide to Life and Money, there's a lot of psychology and stuff in here. We actually started a book talk at Parallel Social Club with this book. We've only met twice, but we didn't even get past the second chapter, even though we met for more than 4 hours, because we were talking about the life part. Because as Dr. J, you said, you have to get the life part right and know what kind of life you want to live, what your goals are, so that then you can get your finances to align. And I think all of us want our lives to be amazing, right? So we have to, according to you, we have to make our finances simple so that our life without kids can be amazing. I'm looking forward to doing that. I hope all of you are looking forward to living amazing lives. And so with that, we want to close the program part of this evening. But the book,
Well, we also have to do the raffle.
Yes, absolutely. Ooh,
So-
where's the raffle ticket?
So the raffle, what we're doing is we
does
offer-
everybody have a ticket?
So we offer something we call a child-free wealth checkup. So we look through people's life finances. It's 7 different areas we look at. And the person who wins this will get to give me all their information. And then we're going to spend an hour figuring out, how does it look through a child-free lens?
Yes.
It's one of those things that normally, I'll tell you right now, we spend 70 or 80% of the time talking about what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah. So it's part
But
therapy,
then-
right?
It's like, oh, hey, you need to fix these things.
Okay, Dr. J, go ahead, and we're gonna go ahead and make the drawing. Find your
Uh-oh.
ticket first. Okay, and we're going to read off the number.
Is this one of those must be present to win?
Yeah, must be present. Yes.
All right. The last 4 numbers are 2083.
Damn.
You get a 1-hour consult. The project is called the Child-Free Checkup, Child-Free Wealth Checkup. Can you read that number again?
Is it you, Danielle? All right, I'm going to pick somebody else.
She already has it. She already has it.
Danielle is another CFP
Oh, another.
who I've known for years.
Okay.
You can still get the free hour, Danielle, but I'm going to.
Okay, one more opportunity.
All right. Number is 2094.
Oh, Ambarish over there.
All right.
Ambarish and Rashmi.
I'll give you my
Yes.
card. Just send me an email.
You're going to get a lot out of this. Yeah. Mhm. All right. And with that, we have, thank you so much for attending. The bookstore closes at 6, so get your book. Dr. J will stick around for questions and to sign your book if you have it with you. We have some refreshments on the side over there, and we look forward to mingling with you until the bookstore closes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. This was really great.
Glad you enjoyed it.
What did I get when I called?
Absolutely. What's that?
That was so great. I love that.
Was it what you expected? Or?
It was